What is up? What is up? Welcome in to a weekday edition of the NBA Waiver Wire Show. A little mailbag. We're gonna do a half hour today. Keep it a little bit shorter for you guys because we got these sit start questions. It's time to shine, baby. No better way to start your week. I know we missed you guys last week. Apologies for that if you were waiting on that on Sunday night, but we're here in the middle of the week trying something a little bit different for y'all today. What's up and welcome in. If you don't know, you should know, but if you don't, it's okay. I'm Ethan. Eric should be here in a little bit. We're here to answer your waiver wire questions. But until we get started with all of that, I just want to give a quick story, a quick shout out. Alexei Pokashevsky. This is the stuff dreams are made of. His minutes are still all over the place. His production is all over the place. But the last four games, Pokashevsky has looked like that waiver wire darling that so many people were excited about, not last year, but the year before. His rookie cards were flying off the shelf if you're into trading cards, and fantasy managers couldn't pick him up fast enough. So somehow he still only owned in 62% of Yahoo leagues. That's up 10% over the last day. I would say that should be closer to 90% at this point, especially given that most teams are at least most leagues, I should say, are at least of the 10-team variety. So he shout out quick there. And then another shout out for us, totally different direction. Mason Plumlee, 3 double-doubles in his last 4 games. Just missed a fourth one a couple games prior to that, had a couple before that. I know everybody wants to talk about Nick Richards. I know everybody wants to talk about, what the Hornets are beyond Mason Plumlee. I know he has a dirty mustache, but Mason Plumlee is the real deal when it comes to production right now. Only about 50% owned in Yahoo leagues. Let's make sure that number changes. But really, the purpose of today's show is we're here for you guys. Any questions you have, especially mailbag. You got guys like Javon Carter, who I've seen as temporary kind of boost in value. Obviously, with injuries impacting the Bucks right now, doesn't seem to matter. They look like a machine no matter what. Remember, Middleton still missing time for them. Guys like Derek White, who you kind of look at and go, is this like a temporary thing? Is this a real thing? Jaylen Brown's had a little bit of knee trouble. So those should call you classic streamers. And yes, I do have a cat right on my lap right now. So let me go ahead and remove that for us today. And then we got other players who, have definitely underperformed. But then you got guys who you want to be early on some guys, right? Like Delano Banton, okay? I don't know if it's saying you're early on him because after somebody drops 27, 4, 4, 3, and 2 from the guard position, I don't think you could be early anymore. But this guy's only 3% rostered. I think a lot of people are, they either say, okay, Fred VanVleet's on the side, Gary Trent Jr. is on the side, Pascal Siakam's on the side, right? Okay, so that's fine. You don't have to have production for the course of the entire season. But while he's in there, use him, right? Especially if you're in a daily league, you got that streamer spot. This looks like a player who should play a little bit more regardless of who else is on the court right now. It's an incredibly small sample size. But if it doesn't work, you throw him back and say, okay, normally I wouldn't, say chase the production. But in this case, I'm intrigued because when you can get those out of position stats, especially from a guard, it can go a long way. You got guys like on the wire right now. I mean, like guys like Charles Bassey, right? I know people are sort of finagling around, for lack of a better word, because he's blocked some shots. He's blocked 8 shots in his last 4 games. Okay, like those are the same people who are saying Bismack Biyombo has no place on their team. So I guess you can't please everybody when it comes to the wire. But guys who I think should be more roster than what they are. I mean, Santi Aldama, right? Coming off a game, last 2 games, averaging 13.5 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal and a half, 2 threes, shooting better than 55% from the field, or at least 55% from the field in both games. He had a little bit of a struggle prior to that. He's been hot and cold like any rookie who's not, coming out of the shoot prime time, making a lot of noise. But guys like that deserve to be rostered where they can give you those stocks, those steals, those blocks, those triples. That's what we look for, man. That's what we look for, that level of production. We look for those guys who do more than just score the basketball, right? Like, I'll give you a prime example. I have DeAndre Hunter on one team. And, kind of was like a last round pick, second to last round pick, didn't give him much thought and said, he can hit some triples, he can score as long as he's healthy enough to be on the court, which has always been his big question mark. You think about DeAndre Hunter as a guy who should be able to give you, some steals, some threes, maybe a block here and there, but he just does nothing for you defensively. I mean, this guy you're talking about a player who, depending on the format of the league, is either ranked in the top 175 or just outside the top 200. I mean, if you're in a no turnover league, his value actually dips because he doesn't turn the ball over a bunch, doesn't do anything defensively. I mean, you're talking about a guy who literally the whole season has like 3 steals and 2 or 3 blocks. Like, that's it. That's all he brings on that side of the ball. He doesn't hit enough threes to be just a 3-point specialist. So that's sort of the downside of a guy like that. But that's the reason why he's available in the last round of your draft or something close to it, right? Then you have other guys who are drafted too high, and then you have others who are drafted too low, obviously, like anything else. But guys, we're here to talk about the waiver wire, right? So whether it's, Denny Abdija, who I'm kind of surprised is only rostered in 11 leagues, right? Like I know Avdija hasn't exactly, lit it up since he came into the league. But in the last handful of games, 3 games, you're talking about a guy who's playing 30 minutes plus, right? He's averaging around 17, 18 points, averaging around, 5 rebounds, handful of assists, a handful of steals, right? He's hitting the three, 2 a game. So this is a guy who could be helpful on your fantasy team. So you want to take advantage of guys like that. Think about those situations, especially if you're in daily formats, especially if you're in leagues without the transactions cap, right? Like some leagues have 4 pickups a week maximum, or 6 or 7, or whatever the number is. But if you have no cap, abuse that piece, man. Because if unless you're really trying to keep a waiver priority for something specific, I would abuse that piece because you're just trying to play the game at that point. The most games played, and that's how we like to go. Okay. Denny Avdija only in 11% of leagues. Grant Williams, 33% of leagues. And that's only because he recently had a big game, but he hasn't really had a great season so far. So it surprises me when a guy like that is more owned than a guy like Denny Avdija, who looks to be on a brief little upswing here, at least for the time being. You look up and down the league, and it's been a weird sort of run, right? You got the Raptors are really hit by injuries. You got the Magic bringing Bol to life. I mean, Bol. Now, this isn't a waiver wire candidate at this point because he's been picked up. But this guy who was ranked basically 400th, 450th, afterthought. Nobody even cared about Bol, right? And now all his card collectors are saying, it's my time. And here they are, right? I mean, this is a guy who's a walking double-double on a nightly basis. He can block shots. He can hit threes. He's like 7'2". He's skinnier than a railing. I mean, it's just pure fascination when it comes to a guy like Bol. Corey Kispert in Washington, again, product of circumstance, right? Couple of games, back-to-back double-digit points. Are you really excited about that? No. Do you want to waste a waiver wire pickup? No. It's interesting how things start to shake out over the course of a full season. And then you really look and you go, okay, so who can help me for the long term, right? Because when you make a waiver wire pickup, whether it's somebody off waivers or somebody who's a free agent, you want that player to have staying power, obviously, knowing that some of those guys are only going to be temporary fixes. But you hope that they have staying power, right? So go back to Charlotte. Nick Richards has been a name that a lot of people talked about. They say, oh, pick up Nick Richards. He's got staying power. He can block shots. He's a big man, all these sort of things. Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it. As long as Plumlee's on the court, I don't see it. I don't know why I think people are more excited about the chance than the actual reality of what's going on. Tari Eason, kind of a similar situation with Houston. You would think he'd be better there than he has been. And unfortunately, he hasn't been. But we're looking, overall, like, how are these guys doing recently, right? We're not talking about just, how are they doing on the whole season. We're talking about how they're doing recently, because we're talking about the recent landscape, right? Norman Powell, right? Not even 50% owned. Talk about 4 straight games, where he's got at least 16 points. Is he going to come in and do a whole lot of other things? No, but he's going to hit a 3 or 2. He's going to score you 15 to 20 points. You might get a steal or 2. And for the back end of your roster, that might be enough. That's okay. We can make that happen. Edward Sumner falls into the same category, right? Kind of unexciting player, but taking advantage of circumstance right now. Again, keep an eye on those guys because they can help your team in the interim. Now, if you want to zoom out, right? Let's say, okay, let's go for the season, shall we say. So last month or so, we're about a month into the NBA season, which is crazy to say. You know who the first overall fantasy player is? Do we know? Do we know who the first overall fantasy player is in an 8-cat league? It's Kevin Durant. Okay, Kevin Durant in an 8-cat league is the first overall fantasy player. And we're not going to spend too much time with 9-cats unless someone has a specific question when it comes to 9-cats. But Kevin Durant is in 8-cat leagues. He is the top ranked player for the year. And you know what's really surprising? You might not surprise you to know that, okay, Jokic is 5th, Curry is 4th, Tatum is 3rd, SGA is 2nd. That's a little bit surprising, right? He's having a hell of a year. Doncic is 6th. But then it starts to get real squirrely, right? DeJounte Murray, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns. That's right on the money, right? You have Mitchell in Cleveland. Marketing, we all know that that's a huge surprise, obviously, right? A lot of people were on Tyrese Halliburton to start this year. I still think he'll be a hell of a player, drafted definitely at a discount from where he'll finish on draft day. But you look at a player like Brook Lopez, man. I mean, Brook Lopez in certain leagues was a guy you could probably snag off the wire depending on the depth of your league, which is just crazy to me. Again, some of these guys have been producing all year long, and people are still saying, I'm not sure about it. I don't know if it's staying, right? Well, we're a month into the season, right? Like Dennis Smith Jr. was a great example of this while LaMelo Ball was on the sidelines, obviously, right? LaMelo was on the sidelines. And instead of, Dennis Smith Jr. just sitting on the sidelines with him, he was producing. Now, obviously, he's dealing with an ankle injury of his own. LaMelo's back. You get a little less excited about that. But for a good 2-3 week stretch there, you're talking about a player who's top 75 player in ACAT leagues. That's usable. That's a usable asset. That's what we like to see. All right. This is what we call real live TV when we got the producer texting on the side and you say, "Are we rolling?" Yeah, I'm rolling. So it's all good when it comes to this. Hopefully, we get Erik in here soon and then we get good to go. So let's check in with the boys. Hey, if anyone has questions, please come at me with questions. Whatever you that's what we're here. That's what we're here for, right? That's what we're here for, is to answer your questions, help you get going. Erik is awake apparently, so we're gonna get him the link so he can get himself in. We're gonna send it to him right now. This is the reality of when you got to do multiple things at once, and then we got to go. So Erik's got the link now. Maybe he'll be in shortly. We'll see how it goes. So we'll let Dan know. Dan Besbris, of course, for those of you who know him already. Let's just do that. All right. All right, so we're just gonna clean that up for future use because we don't want to have dead airtime here. That's no good for anybody. Okay, we don't like that one bit. So we got games tonight, guys. What are your questions? Let's go. Bring me the questions. We'll put that in the chat too. Bring us the questions. We'll put it right up on the screen, right in front of you guys. I mean, I don't know what your decisions are in your leagues. So I wish I was a mind reader. I could win a lottery a lot easier. Unfortunately, I'm not a fortune teller. I just like to give prognostications based on data, based on trends, and based on observations with the eye and with the data. Okay. As we go forth and we look at who's been, a power producer over the first month of the season. Again, Mason Plumlee, top 100 player on the season in ACAT leagues, only 50% owned. Malik Beasley, he's a guy who's getting hot recently, right? Had kind of uneven start to the year. Now all of a sudden he's hot. Okay, you're talking about a top 100 player so far this season, 53% on 8 leagues. Santi Aldama, 47% on, 99th overall player. Isaiah Hartenstein, who I don't understand how he's just, still sitting out there, especially with how long Mitchell Robinson's been on the sidelines at this point. Okay. While guys are holding on to guys like Trey Murphy. Like, I don't get it. Trey Murphy is good when the Pelicans are injured, but when they're not injured, it's all good, baby. It's time to shine. So let's go. Let's get Erik on the stream, shall we? I think we got Erik finally joining us here.
Cheers.
There he is. All right. I'm scared to ask, what time is it for you right now?
It's 7:43 in the morning.
Okay. It's better than 4:43, which is what I was expecting. All right. Not too early, but early enough. Erik, do you have, since you're joining us kind of like as we get rolling here, I'm going to throw it to you, give myself a chance to take a sip of water. Question for you, sir. Is there anyone who has emerged for you so far as a quote-unquote waiver wire gem, right? A guy who could even be on one of your teams or someone who you saw get picked up early in the season and said, I should have been on that?
Wow. Well, I guess the big flavor guy that's kind of hot right now is Charles Bassey of the Spurs. He's not really running with a lot of minutes, but his per minute production is looking pretty good. I mean, I wasn't able to grab him quickly enough, unfortunately. I think I was doing a shift writing for Ethos at the time that he kind of broke out, and I'm in a lot of competitive leagues, and if you snooze, you lose. He's somebody I think that's been pretty hot, and I think that his kind of production on a team, especially like the Spurs, is going to carry over ROS. There's this guy that I picked up in 2, maybe 3 leagues right now, and that's Corey Kispert of the Wizards. He's not flashy, but he's the kind of 3-point shooter who will, be steady, give you those Kyle Korver type stats. Decent field goal, some threes, an occasional steal. That's the kind of thing you're gonna get, and he's been starting. Now the thing is, he wasn't on a lot of rosters at the start of the season because he was injured and he came to the party late because of a sprained ankle, I believe. But he's starting now. He's getting steady minutes, and that's a good thing.
It's
Uh,
it's so
yeah.
it's so funny that you say both of those guys because I did bring up both of those guys previously while we were waiting on the Rotomancer to arrive. So it's funny that you said that. And then one thing
Oh, brilliant minds and all that.
one thing I'll ask you too is, I always like to do this sort of blind data dive. And it surprises me because this player is, about a third owned in Yahoo leagues right now, which strikes me as a little too low. This is a player who, in the month of November, Eric, so we're talking about 7 games so far, is averaging 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 1.9 blocks, so almost elite, 1.3 threes, and 48.5% from the field. And by the way, 1.3 threes on nearly 40% from the 3-point line. Wouldn't you say that this is a player who should be probably rostered in more leagues with those numbers?
Oh yeah, definitely
Right?
more than 33% for
That,
sure.
that that player is Patrick Williams in Chicago, and I know that Chicago has sort of lost their magical luster from last season. I know everybody looked at the Bulls last year and said, "Oh man, maybe with Vucevic and DeRozan and Lonzo and Caruso, and they got all these parts, and maybe they're actually onto something." Maybe not. But regardless, Patrick Williams looks like he's figured out a little bit after he had, what looked like a promising rookie season, kind of took that step back sophomore year. Now he's starting to make it more interesting again. So I always like to say, hey, as much as like Charles Bassey, I brought up and said, look, if you need blocks, right, the same people who might be excited about Charles Bassey might not have been excited about Bismack Biyombo when DeAndre Ayton was on the sidelines. So if you need a block specialist, I can understand that, right? But Corey Kispert, again, taking advantage of a good situation. These are the types of things I was kind of hitting on and saying, look, you have to sometimes play to win the day, right? Not every pickup is going to be for the week, for the 2 weeks, for the month. Sometimes it's going to be about that day. It's going to be about that day for that matchup of the week, especially in a head-to-head league. I mean, you can't worry about tomorrow at the expense of today. And that's
Totally
the
agree. Totally agree.
it's really the key in securing a lot of these, weekly wins that ultimately wind up to put you in a good position to make the playoffs and obviously succeed in the playoffs. All right, we've been asking for questions. Eric, they're coming fast and furious because you started us with Mr. Bassey. I'm gonna let you take this one. Pick a player and tell us why.
Oh goodness gracious, Bassey or Sohan. Oh, uh, that's a tough one. Obviously the trend right now with the Spurs is that Sohan has been given the keys to the point guard duties right now with Trey Jones sitting this one out. But he hasn't shown enough, really, despite the opportunities, for me to get excited about him. I'd go with Bassey because at the end of the day, even though he's averaging minutes in the low 20s or sometimes even below, he's delivering, and it's not always about the minutes, the total minutes that the player plays, but at the end of the day, it's the stats he puts up on the stat sheet that we really care about. And Bassey has shown over the last few games that he's the more reliable guy to deliver what you're looking for. And that's on a value basis in a vacuum. But for a special needs, if you're looking for more specific needs, and if you're not looking for blocks or boards, then maybe Sohan might be the guy because he's supposed to be handling a lot of the ball distribution duties in the coming games. So we'll see from there.
Yeah, I mean, I like you. It's hard for me to get excited about this player too much. Literally, the last 3 games, he's played 30 minutes, 25 minutes. Eric, you know how many assists he has in those last 2 games? Two.
Well, two.
Two,
I mean,
2 assists
it,
in those last 3 games. That's not two in average. That's two combined. He has hit 1 3 over that stretch run. Okay, so points are like the easiest thing we can find on the waiver wire. So I hate when people chase the points, especially if you're talking about, because those two players do such two different things. But I prefer the specialist here, so I'll take Bassey as well. You are welcome
yeah.
to answer that question. All right, OJ is going to ask a question that's going to be for streaming. Is it necessary for him to open up a roster spot? Thank you, OJ, for the league details because that is super helpful. 12-team, head-to-head, 9-cat. My worst players are Jalen Smith, Jabari Smith, Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, Anthony Melton. All right, let me stop you here. You don't have to have a streaming spot. Now, could you have a streaming spot? Absolutely. But you're definitely not dropping Mathurin. You're definitely not dropping Melton, especially while Harden is still out of the lineup. Eric, Are you keeping it status quo, or are you getting rid of one of these players to have a streaming spot?
Um, just looking at those names, I'd rather keep them in general, but it's really hard to say with a concrete finality what my actual opinion would be, because I don't have an idea of who's on the wire, for example, who your best players are. But going back to what Ethan said, no, you don't need a streaming slot if all of your players are healthy and all of your players are better than the average waiver wire ad. That's the bottom line. Um, the only other situation where I would consider freeing up a spot is if I was in a tough matchup for the week and I was, heavily disadvantaged in the games played count or projection. But even then, if my guys are providing quality production, I'm gonna probably stick with that, you know, and hold. Basically, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, okay. So yeah, I mean, look, man, OJ, if you're really wanting that streaming spot, I would say, for me, it would probably be Isaiah Jackson. I know that's tough because so many people are kind of just waiting on the Miles Turner trade at this point, right? Like free Jalen Smith, free Isaiah Jackson. Like that's become a narrative in fantasy landscapes. But if you want to open up the streaming spot, it would be that would be the player for me. With Turner healthy, he just doesn't have the path. Yeah, it's easy to look at that game he recently had against Denver, 17-10, and get a little excited. And until you see the sort of poop sandwich, it's centered around 4-5 the game before that, 6-4 before that, 8-5 before that, 10-5 after that. Like this isn't really an exciting player except for that one outlier. Once in a while he pops off and you go, oh, okay. So remember, there's no emotion in fantasy basketball if you want to win the game. All right, when Siakam comes back, Eric, is Chris Boucher safe to be dumped? And if you don't mind, I would like to take the lead on this platform because we did talk about this about a week and a half ago. I sat here and said, Boucher's the guy, Boucher's the guy, Boucher's the guy. And then he went out and basically pooped in my hand, which I really appreciated. And then all of a sudden, over the last 3 games, he's become a lot more interesting again. Now, I'm going to put interesting with an asterisk because his best game over that 3-game stretch was a 20-point loss at OKC. So he got some nice garbage time run, 20-12, 2 steals and a block. We love to see it, right? He shot 67% from the field in that game. Next game, he couldn't find a shot, but 19-7 with a steal and a block and a couple threes, we take that, especially 28 minutes. Next game, 31 minutes against Detroit, 20 points, only 4 rebounds, steal, no blocks, only 1 3, but shot better than 50% from the field. Eric, I have long been a Chris Boucher guy. I know he was like the fantasy darling for a while there and really fell out of favor, it seemed like, for both fantasy GMs and for Nick Nurse. When Siakam comes back, are you just immediately dropping Chris Boucher? Because I'm going to hold on to him for probably a game or 2 at least and see how this goes, especially with Siakam coming off a groin injury, which can be aggravated.
Well, I'm totally on board with you there, and I'm looking at the Raptors here, and that poor team is half of who they really are at this point, with FVV missing time, Gary Trent missing time, because at the end of the day, he's not just backing up Siakam. He's now like the only productive player able to play, and when you have a situation that Delano Banton is your best player and you're leading your team with 27 points, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. So beyond Siakam, the team has other needs that Boucher will be able to fill. So if I were to rephrase that, I would ask the question: when the Raptors are at full health, would I dump Boucher? Then probably I'd be more inclined to say yes. But for as long as they're dealing with a lot of injury issues and they're not at full health and they're missing some key players, Nick Nurse literally has no choice but to lean on Boucher until that sorts itself out.
Right, right. And I mean, and that's what it is for me too, is like you have this situation where we always want to prognosticate into the future. I love looking ahead instead of looking backwards, but we're still a ways away. Like Boucher is going to have run. It's not like Siakam is due back tomorrow. So again, don't worry about tomorrow at the expense of today. I think you hold on to him for now. No action is required. prepare to move on if you need to, but that should be the case with almost every waiver wire ad that you wind up adding, unless it's a player who, all of a sudden has, like, let's say Isaiah Jackson is dropped. This is a good example. Isaiah Jackson's dropped, right? And then we rush out and Miles Turner's traded. Then Isaiah Jackson gets a lot more of a leash, right? And then it becomes, okay, I'm gonna roster this guy for the rest of the year. So just no rush on making that decision. All right, I know we have a shorter show today because we're trying to finish before the game starts at 4, which is literally 4 minutes from now. So let's do some rapid fire here. All right. Okay, Erik, rapid fire. Assuming Kawhi comes back and plays every other game, does he get the out tag for IR? I mean, if he's out, he's out, right? I think that one's pretty simple. He's out, he's out. So, yeah, I really strongly recommend. We used it last year and definitely in the COVID year in a couple of my leagues. The IR Plus feature, if you have that feature, helps with load management, helps with COVID, helps with all that stuff. So, guy can be out and still be placed on IR Plus, if that makes sense. Michael asked, thinking about dropping campaign for Larry Nance in a 9-cat 12-team league. I like him as a stream because it seems Chris Paul will be back tomorrow. Would like the edge tonight. Erik, we've been talking about today not at the expense of tomorrow. What do you think here? You dropping Payne to add Nance for tonight's game? No Zion tonight.
I like Nance tonight, especially with Zion out. He's, gonna have a lot of minutes. Probably produce decently. Still in the neighborhood of what Payne has been delivering. So it might be a need situation, and it might be a longer term situation because Zion, just got injured and Chris Paul is on his way back. So yeah, I approve of the move.
We like it. I love what Nance brings to the team. I like it. And Michael also added that he likes to keep a bottom spot for a nightly stream. We said go for the Nance show tonight. We're gonna try from Jan. Do you know this person? Do you know this person, Erik?
No.
Nah, we don't know. All right.
Same last name, but wait, it's a Chinese name. They're like
it's like millions of dollars on the road. I love it. Hey, man, my last name, Norof. You ain't never going to find another one of those unless it's one of my family members. So that's why I always ask. All right. What can I trade for Mitch Rob? 16-team, 9-cat, punting, blocks, field goal, and not injury prone. I guess my first question is, if you're punting, blocks, and field goal percentage, what is Mitchell Robinson even doing on your team to start with? Question mark. But that said, I don't know, a ham sandwich. You really can't get much for the guy right now. He was not producing when he was healthy. And now he hasn't been on the court in 2.5 weeks. Erik, you got a better outlook here?
Yuck. All right. Your options now are weighted out because you're gonna have it all. Okay, my answer is depending on how high a value you're still hoping to get out of Mitch Robinson. Now, trading him right now, you're gonna get somebody close to end of bench quality, okay? Because you don't really need his stats, but whoever you're gonna get is gonna be somebody that's okay. Let me just throw a random name because he's been on and off. Somebody, let's say, is expected to fall anyway. Somebody like Jalen Suggs, who's doing so now, but will go down once Cole Anthony comes back. An owner might be aware of that. And that's somebody, that you could probably target since you're punting field goal and blocks. It's not a big, trade, but it might fit your needs there. That's all I could say, with a name pulled out of a hat.
It's a weird outlook, that's for sure. All right, we go. So hopefully, Janet helps. We go try to blow through these last few in a second. Aurora is a spot like Portis, D'Lo, or Linux streamable. 11-team, 9-cat roto, rather shallow. Erik, you like that as a streamer spot?
Oh no, 11-team. I'd say all three of those guys are still pretty useful right now. Whew. No, I'd hang on to them right now. And if it's roto, I assume it's mostly games capped, and unless there's like a super breakout guy, I mean, it's not like you're picking up a Marjon Beauchamp for one of these guys in a short term situation. Anyway, so no, I'd still hold for now. But if you spot a breakout potential, sure. But otherwise, I'd stand pat on those names.
I'm inclined to agree with Eric. D'Lo for sure, keep him around. But if it's as shallow as you say, maybe Portis, maybe Olynyk, as Olynyk has cooled off a little bit. Delonte brings up something I just want to touch on real quick. Not a specific fantasy question, but just discussion. What do we make of the Wizards' run? Are they actually better without Beal? It's fun to think about, right? The Ewing theory: are you better without your best player? We've seen it with the Jazz, right? They've traded away Gobert, they traded away Mitchell, and all of a sudden you got a bunch of misfits who are coming together and be like, okay, nobody wants to play with us on Reject Island. That's cool because we're here to play with each other. That sounds weird, I know, but you get the idea of it. And I don't think the Wizards are better without Beal. I just think guys are more empowered to play certain roles. And on any, it's not any given Sunday, but on any given Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, pick the day, whatever, that can kind of be what it is. I do think it does give the Wizards a small window into looking at what life could be like without Beal, but they've seen that before. And in the NBA, when you trade a superstar for parts, it almost never really goes, right? Aurora add LeBron's out a few games. Lakers won a few games. Food for thought. Lakers have won one game without LeBron, so I'm not ready to go that far, but we'll see how that goes. And then just two other ones before we sneak out of here. Is Denny Avdija now that Bradley Beal is back? He has both. Only picked up Denny since Beal was out. Hold Denny. I was talking about this at the start of the show.
I like Denny.
Please hold Denny. I think he is like the most undersold asset in fantasy basketball right now when it comes to waiver wire pickups. I don't know why he's not getting more love. Hold on to him, especially because it's not a matter of if, but when Porzingis gets injured at some point this year. So hold on to Denny. I like what he could bring to the table. I think that's a good hold. And then last one, we'll get Delonte. Thank you for the subscribe, man. Appreciate you for that feedback. It's always good. Last one from 2 Live. We traded Garland for Halliburton. Not sure what type of league I'm in. Okay, new fantasy hooper. We're here to help you. Is it a good trade? I would love to know whether it's 9-cat or 8-cat. That would go a long way for me. I would also love to know. I think you got Halliburton in this trade. You trade away Garland. If that's the case, I'm for it outright. No matter what. Halliburton is. I think he'll finish as a top 10 player this year.
Win.
That's a good one from you 2 Live. So appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much. Eric, I know it's fast and furious. We're going to get back to some normal programming, scheduled times, making sure everything works. I apologize if anyone has sound issues. I'm kind of in between computers, if that's such a thing in 2022 right now. So I'm working on a very old and dated computer. That will be fixed in the near future, so be on the lookout for that as well. And until next time, Eric's going to wake up in the morning, enjoy his day. I'm going to start winding down. I got a Lakers podcast to record with JC shortly, so be on the lookout for that this evening. Otherwise, it's been a fun day. Eric, great to see you again, man. Glad you're back. We keep doing this, all right?
All right, peace.
Later.